And good morning, everybody. We're live. Welcome. You made it through the week. It's Friday, and here we are all together. And my name is Bryan Armentrout, and I am with the Food Leadership Group. And if you're here for the first time, welcome. This is Food Safety Chat Live, and every Friday at 8 a.m. Mountain Time, where I am in chilly Colorado, where it's currently 20 degrees, and we talk food safety every Friday live, 8 a.m. Mountain, 10 a.m. Eastern, 9 Central. And I am with the wonderful Cori Muse of Food Safety Muse. How are you doing today, Cori?
I'm very good. Very good. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing well too. So where in the world are you at today?
So I'm now in Edinburgh, Texas. We have expanded. So I still have an office in Wisconsin outside Milwaukee, but I'll be in Texas now going forward. So,
Wow, congratulations. Wow, things are
thank
going
you.
well. So that's a good thing to
Yeah.
hear. So one of the things, guys, that we love to do on this, right, is we're building this really cool community around food safety. So like Cheryl has done, good morning, Cheryl, say hello in the chat. And Austin's here. Austin's always awesome, right? So Austin was speaking in Dubai. And so I'm going to be really curious to see what he learned there, right? It seems like that conference in Dubai is just getting bigger and bigger every year. And so that's amazing that he was at that. So I'll be really curious to see what he has to say. Marcel is here. Good morning. Nice to see you. So if you're new to this format, one of the things that we do with this, right, is the first thing that you'll notice is this is not a presentation. This is a discussion, right? This is meant to share information. So I'm fortunate to bring on experts like Cori, and we get to talk about a particular subject and really dive deep into it. And hopefully you'll learn a little bit. One of the things that I have always looked at for sharing information and getting information myself is if I am able to get one key new thing out of that, and I'm able to, and here's the important part, apply it, right, in what I do, it's a win, right? So one of the things with the guests we have on the show is there's always something amazing that we learn on this show. So with experts like Cori, super glad to have you on. So Melody is here. Always good to see our friend Melody. Robert Prevendar. So one of the I don't know what's a good description, big dogs in the world of auditing and certification and standards. And a great guy. So glad that Robert's here. A couple of Roberts, Tammy, Christy. Wow, we got a great show in this morning. This is great. Oh, no electricity, Florida. That's right. Hope everybody's okay down there. I mean, geez, poor Florida. They've been getting hit here recently. That's for sure. So speaking of conferences and things like this, Cori, quick story for everybody. It's a little embarrassing, but I'm going to share it anyway. So this week I went out to a food safety and sanitation conference in Portland, Oregon, sponsored by Washington State and the wonderful team up there. It was a fantastic conference, and it's great to see out there, Cori, the attendance, right? So SQF was this week as well, and you see the pictures of everybody who's there. And I saw a lot of posts from Jose Sabal, who's out at SQF. The Washington State conference, well attended as well. I think their max that they can have at the conference because of room capacity is around 400 people, which is great. They were just about there. They were like around 375 registrants, and I was one of the people who was speaking in the main room. And Kay's here. Wonderful. Hi, Kay. Good to see you. And so I was speaking in the main room, and it was right after lunch, and so that was great. That's not a bad time to go. And I was speaking on environmental monitoring and the changes that are coming with FDA relative to Zone 1 and Zone 2, et cetera, et cetera. If you want to know more about that, drop me a link here and send me an email to my email, and we can talk about that. But so of course, when you're speaking, you get a little nervous when you're getting ready to go up on stage and things like that, right? If you're not getting nervous, that's a bad sign, right? That means that you're not worried about it, and you should be. So I ate my lunch and got ready. I'm like, I better make a trip to the boys' room here before I go on stage just to make sure I'm ready to go and there's nothing distracting me. So I went to the bathroom, came back, and I'm sitting in the front row. And it's maybe a minute before they introduce me. They're going through the speaker notification and all, this is Bryan and blah, blah, blah. And I just happened, I don't know if this is a guy thing or what, it's kind of a reflexive thing that you do, right? Is you kind of check your zipper to make sure everything's okay. It was down. My zipper was down. And I was just like, oh my God. I can only imagine if I hadn't done that and I had given my entire presentation with my fly down in my pants, right? Excuse me, yes, anybody have any questions in the audience? Yeah, Bryan, I've got a question. Do you know your zipper's down? I'm just like, oh man. And so luckily that kind of put me in a good frame of mood for the conversation. So all went well. So good morning, Jennifer. So luckily, Jennifer was with me at the conference. And so I told her this story afterwards, and she had the same reaction I had. And she's like, "Yeah, you would have been walking around on stage. I'm like, oh, Bryan, I'd be like, what? So disaster averted. So that was awesome. And so let's see, Stephen, good morning from Chicago. Hopefully it's not too cold there. I mean, definitely a little chilly here. How is the weather in Texas, by the way?
The highs are like 89 and the low 90s right now. So it's still pretty warm down here, South Texas.
Holy moly. So Cori has been on the show in the past, and it's always an amazing show when she's on. And what we're talking about today is something that I think really, people take for granted, right? Especially on the consumer side. And that's e-commerce. But you know what I almost did, Cori?
Uh-oh.
I'm so bad at this. Everybody, please join us for our ceremonial drink. You got the nice Starbucks there. Wonderful. Please join us. Wonderful, right? You have to have your coffee to start the day. I know I do. So hopefully that sets the tone, and I can kind of lower my energy here a little bit this morning. I'm like going 90 miles an hour. So e-commerce, my goodness, right? We all order things off of Amazon. A lot of people get, the food delivered to your house, right? This is kind of this thing that evolved with COVID, and it's still there, right?
Yes, it's not dying down. It doesn't seem.
Right.
And it's expanding, in fact.
Oh, really? Are there particular areas is more than one area expanding more than others, or?
I'm noticing more companies marketing to children, even infants. I've seen some companies marketing to children as young as 6 months of age. And I've seen elderly where they're saying food for medicine, and they're going to ship the food, to the elderly so they don't have to go out. Which is extremely dangerous, kind of given the current state of regulations and the data that we have about these companies and their practices.
Wow. I mean, because I think, right, as we're all food safety professionals and we're in this space and we understand these things, but from a consumer side, there's no recognition of this, right? So number one, Cori, kind of like you talked about, is at-risk populations, right? So infants and the elderly and the immunocompromised and things like this. This food is all moving in those same channels, and there's no special requirements, right? I can go on to an online service, Amazon or whatever, and order these things, and it gets shipped out, and it's whatever, right? And I think, part of this, right, and you mentioned infants, right? We had this big infant formula crisis, and if you're a mom trying to find infant formula, right, you're scouring everywhere. And who are you buying this from? Right? I don't know, right? A lot of times it's a secondary, third market. Who knows, right? Is this stuff even in shelf life, right? Who knows?
No, I mean, just a lot of it we know isn't in shelf life because we know the shelf life of produce. So if you know the shelf life of raw produce and there's no intervention, you know that if that box went on a 10 to 14 day journey, that your produce is spoiled when it gets to your door, and then you put it in the fridge, and you're extending it even more because you may not cook that meal the night that it arrives.
Right.
So there's
yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say there's just kind of like a myriad of food safety risk that kind of snowball together to just create the perfect storm. And that's really why this is so important, that consumers really understand that this stuff is not safe and it's not regulated.
Ooh, we're going to get into that topic here. So I think a lot of this, right, kind of comes back to the psychology of people in America relative to our food supply, which is it's safe no matter what. We can do whatever we want, right? We can go grocery shopping in the morning and throw it in the trunk of our car in 100-degree weather and drive around all day and go home at night and throw it in the fridge and it's all good. And then we're upset when the milk is spoiled. No, right? It doesn't work that way. And we're seeing this on the e-commerce side as well, where these products are being treated the same way by these companies. So you can have a product which should be refrigerated. So you were drinking, a protein shake or something like this earlier, right? and you order one of those off Amazon, and they throw it in a little shipper bag where we all get those little kind of the little what are they like with the air pockets, right?
Yeah.
Envelopes, right? You order one of those, two of those, and somebody who, I don't know, is it Amazon? Is it somebody else who's selling it through Amazon? I don't know, right? No refrigeration, no ice packs, nothing like that. They chuck it in there and it gets delivered to your house a few days later, right? Tick, tick, tick. And now it's sitting on your porch and you come home that night and you throw it in the fridge. Yikes, right? What happens with that stuff? Who knows, right? Who knows? And it's scary. And there's a lot going on out there around to this, but I think, right, kind of from a regulatory standpoint, what's been kind of the response out there relative to this, Cori? What have you seen?
Well, I mean, those of us who are following it know that there was a public meeting in October of last year. So we've gone full circle a year. And, looking at the comments, the professionals, the experts were very concerned. And there was a theme of this isn't safe. It's not being kept at temperature. I mean, food fraud, you name the food safety risk, we can just kind of put them on a scroll. They're all there. And well, why are they there? Well, because companies are not going to be altruistic by nature. Their goal is to make money. And this is a special niche food business because the way that they're operating is not as food companies. They're operating as tech companies. So a tech company gets their valuation based on their subscribers, their users, the number of boxes that go out the door. And this is dangerous because if your priority is getting the box out the door at all costs, what does that mean for your consumer? And if you add the next layer of, we don't hire qualified scientists, we hire from within, we work with what we've got because we're a startup unicorn company trying to make it to $1 billion. Like I said, it's that snowball. And even further, what a lot of consumers don't know is when they sign up for these subscriptions, you get the 20-page terms of conditions, and who really reads all that?
Yeah.
Well, within that are arbitration clauses that say you can't sue us. And I would say for food, again, the FDA really needs to step in and say, no, this is not how things work in the food industry. If you put adulterated product into interstate commerce, you're breaking the law. So why do we have these companies, these e-com companies with ingredients that are knowingly injuring consumers by the hundreds, and the FDA is not asking them to recall it?
Part of it too, right?
Question.
Does FDA even know who these people are, right? So, I could own a company that is shipping out shoes and who knows what, right? And all of a sudden I get the bright idea to start selling food, right? It's like, hey, I've already set up all my communications channels. I'm a successful e-retailer. I've got a big consumer base. I want to expand. People are asking me for this. Great. I'm going to start selling this stuff, right? And they have no clue, right? They're not registered as a food facility, right? They're a distributor. And they don't know how to handle food, how to manage food, right? And plus on that other side is where they're getting the food from. Are they just going to a store and buying it and then shipping it out? Oh my goodness, right? Did you see the story? It's been a few months ago now where this kid, right? Kudos to him, right? Super entrepreneurial. Went to Walmart and bought a bunch of frozen pizzas and was selling the frozen pizzas after he cooked them, right?
I did see that. Yeah, very inventive, but I don't know, was his cat walking over the stove when he was cooking? Did he have his shirt on? You know what I mean? I have a lot of questions about the safety around that.
Yeah, my goodness. And you see his cart was just loaded with these frozen pizzas. Does he have a giant freezer at home? No, I can guarantee it, right? He's working out of his parents' house. He's got maybe a big freezer in the garage that he's, shoving a few pizzas in there. What, right? He's not qualified in any shape, manner, or form to be doing this. And the system wasn't set up for this. And I think a lot of times, right, especially in the US, regulatory activities really lag behind what's going on in the industry. And, then the industry will, the FDA or whoever will catch up, but then it's too late, right? Because the damage has already been done in these channels.
Yeah, and we also see that the new generation is not going through traditional channels to report illness. If you really want to see what's going on in e-com, go to Reddit, go to Twitter, go to Instagram, go to iwaspoisoned.com, and you will see complaints in the hundreds, and you can see trends. We all ate the same meal, and that's really how, some of these events have come to light, is it's gotten big enough in the social media that someone says, go tell the FDA. And you really, really have to be careful as a consumer. If you insist on eating this garbage, and you call the company and you say, oh, I had diarrhea, I had this and that, and they tell you to throw away the product, they're telling you to destroy evidence. Do not listen to them. Keep the product. If you get sick, keep it. Call your attorney, find out how you can get this tested. Have your attorney navigate the situation with the FDA. That would be my recommendation, because I know a lot of the victims of e-com injury and illness are not getting calls back from their consumer coordinators for months. I mean, little kids with acute liver failure, you'd think that that'd be a quick call back, but no, it's 3-4 months before they're getting back to them. And I don't know if that's because they're not registered, and maybe they're low priority if they're not registered. But the fact is that these companies are putting adulterated product into interstate commerce, and they're hurting people. The way that they communicate their illness events is usually through a single email to their subscribers. And I don't know about you, Bryan, but when I sign up for a subscription, I give them this Yahoo email that I never check, because I don't want to get all the ads and coupons. I just want to get my, t-shirt or wine delivery or whatever it is and be left alone. So if most consumers kind of have that same train of thought, when the meal kit company sends them the email and says, hey, we didn't label for allergens and you have a peanut allergy, you're going to be in big trouble if you don't get that communication.
Right. Well, and most of these meal kits are set up, right? They're not shipped frozen, I don't think, right? They're generally refrigerated, and depending on what it is.
Yeah, depending on what it is, most are not frozen, and even the ones that claim to be frozen aren't arriving frozen. And these companies are giving food safety advice that's just contradictory to what we know as scientists, what we know using data, and telling them, oh, if it's cool to touch, it's okay. Oh, it thawed, it's okay. Ooh. Well, it depends on what it is. If it thawed, if it thawed and it was fish and it was meant to be frozen solid and that was the control, well, now you might get some histamines, you might get a bacteria, you might get a toxin. That's not good advice.
Well, they're not qualified, right, to give this advice. They're not food scientists or food safety people. No. And I've heard too that part of this, right, is, well, number one, shipping this stuff is expensive, right? So if you're shipping product that needs to be temperature controlled, it's like, oh, okay, I need a big box with styrofoam. I need to put in some blue ice and these type of things. Are you going to go to that expense on something with a thin margin because you're competing with other people who aren't doing that? Probably not. And you're saying, hey, you know what? I've got a frozen steak in this package. That steak will keep everything else cool in there. It's all good.
That's something I've heard clients say, is that they believe that their frozen meat is serving as ice packs, and it's just like, like, okay. Yeah.
Well, part of this too, right, is from the e-commerce side. If you're putting in frozen things with perishable things in the same package, well, now you're worried that the frozen thing is going to cause the lettuce to wilt and get brown and things like this. So you're like, oh, I don't want to do that. So now you're kind of playing that game too. It's like, oh, okay, well, we'll just kind of ship it like this. And part of this too, right, Cori, is these kits, right, are designed to be eaten pretty quickly, right? And odds are, if you buy this and then you eat it within a day or two, and then you get that notice in the email that you never check, right? It's way after the fact. The damage is already done.
And that's really, like, even as you say, you're eating them very quickly. That's assuming that the company sent you something that was early to mid shelf life. And you got to know that these companies on thin margins are buying trash ingredients. You know what I mean? They're buying meats that are kind of at the end of their shelf life and storing them in massive amounts, bringing them out to a floor and slacking and maybe refreezing and slacking a little. And it's a recipe for disaster every way that you look at it. And then to add to that, there's no oversight. So when the cat's away, the mice will play. To think that these companies are suddenly going to go, you know what, this is wrong, we shouldn't be doing this, is just asinine. That's not going to happen. And what we see is there's more and more events going on, and these events are getting bigger, and the results of these events are getting more severe. It's not just I had some diarrhea. It's, hey, I lost an organ and I'm going to be affected for the rest of my life.
Right. And if you're a fly-by-night e-commerce company and this happens, you just close shop and disappear.
Yeah, we here at my company, we're working on a database, and we're collecting all the e-com companies we can find. And let me tell you, it's hard because you have to chase them. They are fly-by-night. We have over 400, and each time we get to 100 mark, I'm like, well, maybe we should stop. But there's so many that I would go out on a limb to say, I bet we could get to 1,000 if we keep going.
Wow.
But some of the themes that we're seeing is, and these are the lower level guys, they have a logo, they have a front, maybe it's on Facebook, maybe it's on IG. They start getting complaints on Yelp. They start getting food poisoning complaints, and you start noticing, oh, something's going on. Well, all of a sudden they disappear. And then we find a company a little bit down the road, and we can tell it's the same company. The logo is only changed slightly. You know, there's little nuances where we're going, this is probably the exact same company. They poisoned a bunch of people, and they don't want the next customer to remember their name. So they're just going to dissolve their LLC and they're going to move on to another. And again, there's no rules, there's no laws, there's no regulations in place to stop them from doing this. And with 400 of these guys and counting, it's going to be really hard if they're not registered for the FDA to know they're there. And to add to that, like I said earlier, these customers of the younger generations, they're not calling the FDA when they get sick. They're going to the internet, and they're blasting them on Reddit. They're blasting them on Twitter. And then you find these companies start deleting those comments, blocking those people that are making complaints. I mean, just essentially trying to hide the fact, sweep it under the rug that we've got this massive event going on. And I do think it's important to let consumers know that, you know, while it's okay to go vent on social media, you really do need to tell your local health department, and you need to tell the FDA, and under no circumstance do you throw away the food that got you sick. Right. Wrap it up, save it.
Yeah, absolutely. And even if you did complain to, let's say, your local health authority or things like this, right? You're in, I don't know, Colorado, like I am. And let's say this company's in Texas, they have no jurisdiction, right? They have no way to go down there and go after that. And what's FDA going to do, right? If I am producing this product and I'm selling it to you out of my house here in Colorado, and something happens, FDA has no idea where I am, right? It's not like I have to list my address on the website, or if I even have a website, right? I could just be somebody on Amazon selling stuff.
And most of them don't list their address. They're very, very elusive. They don't want you to know where they are, what they're doing.
Right.
It's just a website, and a lot of them you can't even get into it unless you subscribe to the service. So it's even more tricky to me. Like, what are you hiding? You can't just show us your offerings, because I usually go to see, when we put it in the database, is it perishable? Is it something high risk? Because that's my concern. If you're selling, there's certain non-perishable items that it's canned food, whatever, you want to ship that in a box, fine. But raw meat, raw produce, putting it all together in a bag, it's bad news.
Well, yeah, imagine that, right? So I don't know anything about food safety, and I'm selling this stuff, and I've got a raw steak or hamburger, right? Or a raw hamburger for somebody to cook in direct contact with something I'm going to be making a ready-to-eat salad with. right? What happened? Yeast, right? It just
and they don't always tell you, you know what I mean? Those ingredients, I see a lot of them. It looks like they just put them all in a bag and you just kind of dump it out of the bag. And that's pretty crazy to me as well. You wouldn't do that at the grocery store. You know,
No.
if you caught, you know, Albertsons putting your meat, your produce, you would get mad at them. You would be like, what are you doing? So
Yeah.
why do consumers, I mean, really, that's like the psychological piece, is why do consumers believe that because they have really good marketing that it's safe? I had one gentleman tell me, oh, all food is regulated the same. You know, you don't know what you're talking about. And I almost fell out of my chair laughing. I'm like, bro, you must not know much about, you know, how food safety works and how regulations and authorities work. Not all food is regulated the same, guys. And it's very important that you understand that. And the importance is that a food manufacturer is going to make that food, and it's going to be days to weeks to months before it gets to consumers. So if you have a contamination, you have all that time to proliferate, versus you're at a restaurant and somebody, and I'm not saying it, drop food on the floor, but if they do and they put it on your plate and they bring it out to you in 20 minutes, there's less chance that something's proliferated to a level that's going to make you sick versus manufacturing. And the problem is that the FDA is calling these places retail establishments. They're not retail establishments, not by any stretch of the imagination. And then they put it on a truck that is exempt from sanitary transport laws. And I've talked to some FedEx drivers locally, and they tell me they can't stand these meal kits. They say that they leak in their truck and it smells awful, that, you know, the packaging busts open sometimes, but mostly it's the leaky meats and the bad smells that they get from those boxes. And around here, those trucks get up to 130 degrees. The driver doesn't even have air conditioning. And you can't tell me that one box with a little bit of insulation and 2 ice packs is going to withstand 2, 3, 4 days of 130 degree heat. That's just asinine. And I'm still waiting for somebody to give me a scientifically validated study that says this is safe, because you get a lot of them that'll tell you, oh, we do the monitoring. Well, honey, that's a verification. That's not a validation. I want to see that you've validated these controls, because it's just so dangerous. It blows my mind. It just blows my mind that the FDA still hasn't said anything, but they're giving out 483s. So that's curious to me, that maybe that they're going to ask these companies to observe FSMA.
Well, and you have to figure too, right? A company has to get to a big enough size to get FDA's attention also, right? I mean, if it's a small mom and pop only doing a little bit of business on the side, it's probably not going to get FDA's attention, right? Onesie, twosie type complaints and things like this. And those guys are going to fly under the radar all the time. And paradoxically, those people are probably even riskier, right? Because they have even less knowledge of what's going on, right? So you get these random incidents and FDA has trouble tracking those things down. Hey, we're getting some really good comments here, guys. Appreciate it. Keep them coming. So let's see. Laura has a comment here. We were the first consumers to speak to the FDA about Daily Harvest, and they didn't know who they were or where they're even manufacturing for days. Consumers contacted FDA before Daily Harvest. Did Daily Harvest have a duty to do so on their own?
That's a good question. Did they have a duty or did they have a legal obligation? I would say they have a duty, but they don't have a legal obligation.
Oh, no, we have a contract in place that says if you get sick, you can't sue us.
And that's their mindset. I mean, I don't know, Bryan, did you see the video I made about Daily Harvest where Rachel Drury, the CEO, is on a podcast and she's laughing about how the experts told her, you can't do this, it's not safe. And she said, I just quit listening to the experts. I said, I'm going to do what I want. And that's what I did. And she laughs and she laughs and she thinks it's so funny. I don't think it's funny. It's not funny. It's serious. And the experts she spoke to were right. She shouldn't be doing that, not without appropriate, scientifically validated controls. And it's very obvious that Daily Harvest doesn't have a real robust supplier approval system
Mhm.
because we see, they sicken 389 people, and that's just the count from the FDA. I would imagine the count's way, way higher.
Way. I agree. So, I mean, yeah, Felix had a comment here. FDA has the authority, provisions, and the opportunities to know where these operators are. Yes, but it all comes down to resources as well, right? And if you're the district director and you've got thin resources, you're going to go after the people first, right? It's a difficult thing to say, hey, there's some unknown players out there that may be causing problems. Can you put some resources on that? Oh, okay. Where and what, right? And I think maybe that's what, last October, FDA with this meeting was trying to get to, right? And I looked at that information too, Cori, right? There was, all the profiles and bios of the people who attended with the different agencies and some, private entities that were involved in the conversations as well. It was over 20 pages of bios of people who were at that meeting. Have we seen anything come out of this yet?
No.
Nothing.
There hasn't been a single formal update from the FDA. It's just been crickets.
Huh. So they announced the meeting, they had the meeting, and then nothing else came out of it.
Nothing else came out of it.
Wow. Very interesting. So I know from experience working with companies who do e-commerce, and this is very interesting, when you're dealing with e-commerce people, and I'll use Amazon as an example, not necessarily saying it's them, but if you have damage in transit. So we have had products sold through one of my clients that would go to consumers and using agencies. So companies can use other companies then to package these things and get them ready for e-commerce and then ship them out on their behalf. And it'll arrive damaged or broken, or it may be, compromised seal or something like this. And then they'll complain back to the company. And so these companies I'm working with, we've talked with these companies that are doing this e-retail like Amazon or things like this. And pretty much the response we've gotten back is, that's your problem. You need to design your packaging to survive what we do.
It's past the potato right now, if you ask me, past the potato of responsibility. And how can we usurp legal responsibility?
Right. And when you look at this packaging, right, if you're a food company and you're designing your packaging, you're designing it for the intended use, right? Which is, okay, we're going to have this half gallon of milk that is shipped in this cold chain that goes through this distribution system. It's stored upright in pallets and crates and wrapped in shrink wrap and all these type of things, and then put out on the store shelves. It's always maintained that way. All those rules are out the door when it goes to e-commerce, right? Because now you've got that half gallon of milk that gets thrown in a box or something like that, gets jostled, to your point, put in 130, 140 degree trucks for days on end, sitting on docks, who knows what, and then sitting on your porch until you come home from work that night in the middle of a hot Texas summer, and you throw it in your fridge.
Yeah, and I think just like in LinkedIn, talking to people in the comments, I've had discussions where people say, that's not true. They ship it overnight. Okay, let me clarify, because even if they ship it overnight, they're prepping your meal a week in advance, and they're staging your meal. And a giant FedEx truck, a 55-foot unrefrigerated trailer, backs up to their dock. And if they've got 1 million boxes to send out that week, they're going to pack that FedEx truck until the boxes are full. Man. That's going to be 1 or 2 days. That trailer is going to go to another FedEx site, and they're going to offload onto vans. That's going to be another 1 to 2 days. So you're sorely mistaken if you think that if you're shipping millions of boxes that it's possible to pack it all up, put it on the truck, and get it to you the next day. If you chose overnight shipping, that just means that the time that you're promised is when that box is going to get to you. But the logistics of what led up to that point, that box was outside of chain of custody for 3 days at minimum. And when I say outside of chain of custody, I also mean it's unrefrigerated. Right. So consumers really need to understand that.
Yeah, and FedEx does not, at least to my knowledge, right? They don't have a cold chain delivery system, right? It's all ambient.
No, all ambient. And these places are shipping UPS, FedEx, even USPS, the mail service, DHL. I'm not sure if DHL has refrigerated trucks, but I highly doubt it because, like I said in the beginning, they're running on low, I'd say negative margins. So if you're running on negative margins, you're probably not going to invest in a fleet of refrigerated trucks.
Yeah. Why would you want to lose money faster?
Yeah.
Right. And you're competing, right? So if I'm a company doing this and I'm competing against other companies, right? And let's say I've got, some knowledge around this. And I'm like, oh my goodness, I have to do all these things to protect my product and have these dedicated shipments and all these type of things. I'm competing against people who aren't doing that. So if I'm a consumer online and I see, all right, Bryan's food company is selling these meal kits online for $100, and I see another company that's selling the same meal kit for $30, which one am I going to buy, right? I'm going to buy the $30 one, right? Because in my mind as a consumer, I don't know, right? It's just I know that other company's really expensive.
Yeah, and I'd say on those meal kits, when you see the bargains, red alert. I would say red alert. If they can sell it to you for $6 a meal, there's something. It's not being done safely. I'll just say that.
So behind the scenes, it's probably somebody's back there, and this is pure speculation, right? Is, oh hey, we're some of this stuff is starting to go bad. Let's run a special and move it out.
Yeah, and they're buying. They're unqualified, so they're buying. Mostly the supply chain's probably making the decisions on what they're buying, and it's cheap. So they want cheap ingredients. Well, what does that mean? It means end of shelf life. It means high micro load. And I don't necessarily mean pathogenic load. I just mean micro load. And that's not healthy, nutritious food. And a lot of these places, the irony, Daily Harvest is, oh, we're organic and we're healthy. Well, you're not healthy if your food poisons and kills people. That doesn't matter how organic or how sustainable, it was supposedly sourced. If your consumers are in the hospital in the hundreds, you need to rethink your methods, rethink your, company.
Well, then to your point, right?
Values.
I mean, so marketing does not equal food safety. And just because they put up a fancy website with all kinds of, we're sustainable and look at us, we love Mother Earth, it doesn't matter, right? And a lot of times too, right? And part of the dirty secret, right, is around reviews and things like this too, right? Companies can buy reviews from other companies, right? And put them on there and say, oh my God, this is just amazing. I love it. 5 stars.
And companies like Daily Harvest are they're blocking anybody that says anything negative in the comments. They're blocking victims. They're taking things down. I know I commented on something on LinkedIn on Rachel Drury's page, and within seconds, Bryan, it was taken down. Like, they have somebody just sitting there monitoring. So what it's demonstrating is sweep it under the rug. Just sweep it under the rug, which would also kind of allude to me that there's probably some criminal activity going on here. And I will not be surprised. In fact, I would bet that in discovery, when hopefully Marler takes these assholes down, they're going to find that Daily Harvest got hundreds of complaints before they ever chose to initiate a recall, kind of an under the table, like secret email recall. Let's not be real loud about this. And the FDA did not require them to recall the remaining product, either from Daily Harvest or Revive Smoothies, who had the same product that was linked to the illnesses. And I think it was October 21st that the FDA sent the email and just said, yep, we're done. This is what happened. And here we go. We don't know what happened, and have a nice day. And it's shocking and it's eye-opening, especially for victims, because the victims were under the impression that this food was regulated by the FDA and that the FDA would keep them safe. And that's just not the case.
Right. Well, and something that we talk about a lot on this food safety chat is, food safety, we're all in this together, right? And we all get better by learning from each other. And these companies are dragging us down, right? Because now we're being put in the same category. Because if I'm making a dairy product and I really care and I do all these type of things to have a safe product that my consumers enjoy and love, and there's a company that's taking my stuff and then compromising it, I'm getting the blame, right? So they're taking my brand, putting it in their package, and now they're destroying that relationship with me, right? Because now,
That's an excellent point. I may have talked about that last time. I had talked to meat companies that said, we were supplying to so-and-so and we stopped because we were getting customer complaints about our product and we couldn't figure out what was going on. It was coming from the meal kits because the meal kits were abusing their product and the consumer just saw their brand and called to complain to the supplier of the food and not the meal kit company. So suppliers beware. I know of another individual that had, they were supplying produce to one of these places and they were bringing in RPCs and they got a listeria hit. They couldn't figure out where is this coming from? It was in a very weird place. And they started watching the cameras and the only thing they could find was that meal kit company's RPCs were on that location where they found the hit, kind of suggesting that the listeria came from those RPCs that they were putting on the ground. So that's another risk. If you're a supplier, I would ask, are you washing these? Are you sanitizing these? I would approach these companies with distrust, to be honest. I would not trust anything they say. I would verify, I would get it in writing. Don't put your business at risk because that's what's gonna happen.
Wow. So you mentioned a term I didn't recognize earlier, RPC. What's that?
Like the crates that you can break down for produce. They're you think they have like some holes in them to breathe, and so you can clamp them down and they go flat, or you can raise them up and then you put all the produce in there.
Oh, okay. So then they ship those back to the produce guys and then they reopen them up and then they go back and forth.
Yeah, they go back and forth.
Oh boy, that sounds little, I don't know. So that's kind of one of the cool things about this chat as well, right? My background's not produce. I don't know much about produce and how those systems work, right? I'm dairy, CPG, beverages, and things like this. But wow, that sounds a little something that needs attention. I think maybe there is, right? Yes. Wow, interesting. So yeah, so I'm a food company, and Jennifer pointed this out as well here in the comments. They're damaging the trust for the whole food supply chain, 100%. Food safety issues impact everyone in the industry, 100%. So Felix is asking a question here. Bryan and Cori, here's an example of how the UK government is tapping into resources down to enlisting the help of local authorities. And then he's put a link in here. Thanks, Felix. Appreciate that. This is why this forum is so awesome, right? We get together and share information. And if I am a food safety director or a quality manager at one of these companies and I'm watching this right now, and I didn't know this was going on, Cori, my Friday's probably been ruined right now, right? It's just like, oh, new risk. Oh my goodness, right? So if you're working in a company and you have your brand out there, even if you don't, right? If you're working through co-mans or your private label or things like that, you still need to understand this risk and protect your company. If I'm working in the manufacturing side and I'm now waking up to this brand new risk that I didn't even know about, what should be some of the things that you should do then as a food safety person working at a manufacturer to help protect your company?
You mean in the context of we're the manufacturer and we're going to supply to this company? Yeah.
So let's say that I'm making cheese, right? So Bryan's Cheese Company, and we're selling cheese all over the country, right? And we're selling to food service and retail, right? And we're doing pretty well. And now all of a sudden somebody in the company says, and I don't even know about this, right? I'm working at a plant. And somebody at corporate says, hey, you know what? We should get in on this e-retailer stuff. Let's start partnering with some of these companies out there and go into these new channels, right? This is this new exciting business. I don't even know about that. And now all of a sudden, Bryan's Cheese is starting to go through these secondary channels, creating this new risk, and I don't even know about it. I mean, should I start talking with the sales team within my company? I don't know. What do you think? Any ideas?
I mean, I would avoid it, but if you can't, because businesses have to make money, I would audit that company like you would a supplier. I would go to the facility, I would inspect them thoroughly, everything they're doing. How do you handle? Where do you store? And the biggest question I would ask is, do you have scientifically validated temperature controls? And my guess is going to be no, because I can't find a single one that can tell me they do. Yeah. Because you could do it, but it's going to cost you money. to appropriately pack these boxes and monitor them. So I'd say, audit, inspect, don't trust that company, maybe drop in on them ever so often, really understand how they're going to be using your product. And let's say you make a ready to cook product, put it in the contract. This is a ready to cook product. It is not ready to eat. I mean, I would spell everything out and assume that the e-com company knows nothing about food safety, and really just CYA, cover your ass with a contract and go look at them, really look at them.
Yeah, that's really good advice. So essentially, if I'm quality director in a company, I'm thinking about this. Number one, right? I need to talk with our sales groups. I need to talk with our company and figure out, are we doing e-commerce? We may not even know, right? It's kind of like this kid at buying the pizzas. We may not even know. If you're a big enough company and these channels are starting to be explored, then essentially I would look at this, Cori, at these e-commerce companies essentially as a co-packer, right? And you need to qualify them just like you would a co-packer. So to that point, right? Do you have liability insurance, right? What's your continuing guarantees? I want to see your FDA registration for this facility, right? And these type of things. You need to protect your company. And a lot of what we do in food safety is kind of these proactive measures. And one of the things that I would always train my quality managers on is the hard thing about what we do is if we're successful and we're good at it, nobody notices, right? So if you're able to put in a good e-commerce system and a good supply chain process and prevent this from happening, nobody's ever going to see it, right? So you need to protect your brands, because the last thing you want is, Bryan's Cheese Company, right? And my product is getting packaged by these unknown companies and being delivered, and I'm getting quality complaints. And now all of a sudden, to your point, Cori, on Facebook or Reddit or Yelp or who knows what, Twitter, right? There's pictures of my product that are showing up and saying, hey, don't buy Bryan's cheese. Look what I got. It's all moldy and gross, right?
Exactly.
And now as a good quality person, I'm going to start an investigation to figure out why that's happening. And if you don't understand that supply chain, it's going nowhere. And you may end up with a nasty surprise one day, a recall.
DTC. I think DTC means direct to consumer.
Ah, thank you. Yeah, so Laura had a comment here. Yeah, so it's always interesting, isn't it? Every industry that you work in, we all have our own lingo, right? It always takes a little while to figure those things out. So Laura's got a comment here. Let's see. The last time we were at my husband's liver doctor, they told us not to eat food unregulated by the FDA. Then the doctor was shocked to find out that direct-to-consumer isn't regulated, and he himself orders that. When it comes to liver poisoning, he said, quote, we have patients what drugs or medicines have taken. We don't think to ask them about the food they ate. They were genuinely
the doctor learned something.
Oh, wow. And if you have a liver condition, I hope your husband's doing well, Laura. I mean, that's something you do not mess around with, right? I mean, that's serious stuff.
And that's what was so shocking about the Daily Harvest, is that you have hundreds of people in acute liver failure and you think toxins, you think drugs, and what on earth did they do to make all these people sick?
Yeah. Oof. Right. And so if you're trying to do an investigation, it's probably not going to pop up.
It's not even going to cross your mind.
Right. That's a good point too, Cori, right? Because it's kind of like, what's that old saying? If you have a hammer, everything in the world is a nail, right? So if you're a doctor and the main mechanism you use for treating people is your evaluation, and then if they need medication, that's what you're looking at, right? You're not thinking about other stuff.
Yeah.
Wow. Craziness. So it sounds like in your space, and Cori, you kind of put a lot of this on your own shoulders, right? So what have you been doing in this space? Let our audience know what's been going on.
Yeah, so Megan Fish and I are kind of partners in e-com. We've both worked firsthand with these companies and are very aware of the food safety risk, and kind of lending our expertise to the industry. So we're working on some offerings. I feel strongly that in the next few years, the FDA will step in. And sadly, I think it'll be after people die. we're working on a database. Hopefully we can launch that in, early 2023, where we're gonna show all the companies, and we're just gonna give you the facts. Do they have an arbitration clause? Do they ship on UPS? How long have they been around? How many complaints do we see in the social media? And kind of give them a little score of risk. This is the most risky. These are the, less risky if they're registered with the FDA. But we feel strongly it's unsafe and you shouldn't eat it, but we know that that's not practical, and people are going to continue to eat it. So we just want consumers to have the tools to understand it's not regulated, it's not safe. These are the reasons why. And pretty soon I'm going to have a podcast where we'll start talking about some of the stuff. So while I'm here, if you are a employee or ex-employee of any kind of e-com company, or even FedEx, UPS, and you have some stories to tell about these meal kits, maybe you were fired for bringing something to light. I've had many people in my personal messages tell me stories that are sad, and they're very consistent by company. It seems like these companies kind of operate the same, like I said, like a tech company, and kind of that 80-hour toxic grind work week type thing. But we want to hear from people that have information. We want to hear from victims. We want to bring awareness to the general public that this is not safe. There are real people that have been affected by this, and it's just not okay that these big companies can sweep it under the rug. And I don't know, hopefully maybe even the FDA will start paying attention. This is making you look bad, guys. I'm talking to you, feds. It's making you look really bad. You killed some babies with the Abbott deal. You knew there was Chronobacter in the facility. Now you know that e-com is dangerous. We have the evidence. It's not safe. It's not arriving at safe temperatures. You're putting consumers at risk. And after the e-com meeting, you had a whole year to respond. You didn't. And now we've got, almost 400 people with severe, lifelong, life-altering, medical conditions thanks to Daily Harvest. And P.S., if you're listening and you eat Daily Harvest or Revive smoothies, throw that shit away. If it's in your freezer, it could be part of the recall. The FDA did not mandate the recall, so there's still product in freezers. This is not over. Somebody is going to pull it out of their freezer and eat it, and we're going to hear, a few more case counts. But
wow,
those are kind of some of the more important things to highlight.
Wow. So, well, first off on this side, thank you, Cori, for stepping up and seeing this issue, right? And this is something that I love about the food safety community, right? Is we care, right? And part of the thing that I think defines food safety and quality assurance people in companies and working on their own and things like this is we view what we do through a moral lens, right? It's just not a job, right? We're out there defending what's right? What should be done and making sure that happens. So thank you for stepping up and doing this. Gosh, this is, hopefully this is waking people up to this. Part of, I think, the efforts and kind of what came to mind as you're explaining the amazing things that you're doing in this space is restaurants, right? Remember, we didn't have restaurant grading scores, right? And then they started putting restaurant scores in windows, right? And if I'm going to go eat in a restaurant and I see a D or whatever, I was like, no, I'm not, right? Or they get a bad score and they don't put it up. And I've also seen ones where they will try and change the letter into something else, right? Or fake it. It's the same type of thing here. So do you see in the long term with this then, do you see kind of groups like GFSI and other things stepping up and coming up with a certification program for these guys?
My personal opinion is that there's not enough people qualified to come up with a certification standard. I believe there is one. It might be through BRC. I think it was a company in China, maybe, that got the first e-commerce certification. But these certifications, we're finding are not even adequate to have effective food safety in food manufacturing facilities. And I use that because, Abbott had great scores, Dole had great scores. All of these companies in the past year that have deaths on their hands had really great GFSI scores. There's meal kit companies out there that are GFSI certified, and they have excellent scores, and they're making people sick, and they're doing, nefarious things, and they have deceptive business practices. So me personally, I wouldn't look to GFSI to be, the saving grace in this. It would be certainly an extra layer of oversight, maybe. And I'd say, if we're making a risk matrix and we were to know that they were certified, the risk would go down slightly. But my personal opinion, I don't think there's enough people really qualified. I think we really need to educate all professionals on how these companies are truly operating, not how they're telling us that they're operating because they want to keep saying they're retail exempt, but really go in and see this is full-scale manufacturing, and full-scale manufacturing has to validate all of these things. And you don't have environmental monitoring, you're not validating your sanitation or your allergen changeover, you're not operating safely. And so would a certification help that? I don't know.
Yeah, it's a good point, right? If you're willing to cheat on everything else, why not cheat on that, right?
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. If you're a deceptive business, there's nothing that's going to stop you from trying to cheat on GFSI too.
Well, and Felix makes a good point here as well, right? Is we're kind of focusing in on those foodborne hazards, but there's a lot more than just that. 100%. Yep, totally agree, Felix. That's a good point. Thank you. So I think part of this too, right? We'll kind of bring this back up to the 30,000 foot level because time really flew on this, right? Is a lot of what we do in food safety, right? Is kind of this, what we're going through right now, right? Is this epiphany of like, oh my God, what is going on here? And unfortunately, right, a lot of it, we can't rely on anybody else to solve this problem, right? So if you are a food manufacturer and you have private label, I don't care, right? If you're a food manufacturer in any aspect, you're going to have to step up and look at this yourself, right? So this first line of defense, as we talked about here a little bit ago, is going to be, if I'm in charge of quality assurance at a food manufacturer, I need to be very proactive in my company and go talk with the sales group and talk with the food service guys and everything else. And if we have short code product, where does that go, right? Are we selling that at a discount? And what channels is that going into? And figuring all these things out. And if you find out that there are these type of things happening in your company, it's going to fall on your shoulders, right? You need to get out there and look at those guys and say, I need to protect my brand. I need to protect my consumers. They trust what I'm doing. And that is gold. You cannot, once that is gone, you cannot get that back. It's extremely difficult. I mean, how long ago did Bluebell happen? And we're still talking about what happened to Bluebell ice cream. That damage to your brand is, if it's a serious issue, that's irreversible, right? You have to protect your company. And part of what makes for a good food safety professional is being proactive and looking down the road and seeing what's coming. And Cori, you're one of those people out there in front on this. And so thank you for everything you're doing on that. And this is just eye-opening. And if we're able to help a few people on this call and a few people see this and it helps and it saves them, man, that's what we do this for. But in the meantime, right, what you're doing around this database and building awareness, wow, fantastic. And how can people, as we're building this and evolving, what's the best way for people to get a hold? You mentioned earlier people are reporting things to you. What's the best way for people to do that?
I've got my email address up on here. You can also go to my website, foodsafetymuse.com, and I can drop it in the comments after we hang up. I'll drop a few more things in the comments. One I want to share with everybody is the GHI whistleblower site. Ooh. And it's in, I think, over 27 languages. Whether you're e-com manufacturer, any kind of food, you want to make an anonymous complaint, you can do it through GHI, and it's truly anonymous. We don't, the complaints go through a third party and they don't share IP addresses with us. And that's just something I want everybody to know, because I know a lot of professionals see things, they get nervous, they don't want to lose their job. That's one avenue to report things.
Yeah, we've all been in situations like that, right? Where like a third-party auditor will go to a plant, right? And the quality manager's been beating his head against the wall trying to get something fixed with no results, right? So you'll kind of pull the auditor aside and say, it'd be kind of really nice if you write this up in the report, right?
Oh yeah.
Kind of extra credibility. And I want to find that website right now. I'll include it for everybody. So GHI Whistleblower.
Well, it's a long one. Let's see if I can get it.
I found something here on Food Safety Magazine. Does that have a
Hold on.
link in here? I'm going to link to this food safety story, right? So that people can at least get that here to get going.
It says private chat. I don't know if I'm sending that to you, Brian, but that's the GHI site. And I'll drop it later. I'll drop a few other articles too for people. One about the arbitration clauses so they can see if they've signed one of these agreements, if it's too late to rescind that.
Yes, the running joke, right, is like I accept, right? Nobody reads those things, right?
Exactly.
And companies know that, right? And they count on that. So the other thing I'm going to drop in here too is my locals group, which is this food safety community we're building. And let's talk about these things and start building this out, right? Because shining light on these type of issues is how they get fixed. And we need to work on these things together because, again, right, food safety, not a point of competition. If there's people that are out there damaging the integrity of food safety, man, we need to shut that down and really get a handle on that. Let's see, Cori had a comment here. You touched on monitoring in the form of auditing suppliers. There are, of course, more solutions that could be deployed. Yep, I think we kind of covered that pretty well. Wow, time flew here, Cori. Any closing thoughts or things you'd like to leave people with?
No, beware of e-com food. Like, I wish I had something positive to end on. I don't want to see people die. I want the FDA to step in, and I think we're going to have to turn to consumers and start educating them. And as you say, like as professionals, we have a duty. If we're competent, qualified professionals, we have a duty to act ethically and notify consumers of these things, because we don't want anyone getting sick from the food we make.
Absolutely right. That's our family.
It's our families. It's supposed to be our fuel. It's supposed to be, what helps us, grow and thrive, not go sit on the toilet and have diarrhea, or worse, end up in the hospital with liver failure.
I mean, because part of this too, right, coming out of COVID, a lot of these vulnerable populations, the elderly and things like this, right, couldn't go to the stores. And so they're relying on this, and they're highly at risk. So this is great information.
Tell grandma. Tell grandma. If your grandparents are buying this stuff, please tell them to stop, because they're at risk. They really are.
Absolutely. Great. Well, let's close out for today. This has been an amazing talk. And definitely, so it would be great to continue this conversation on how to educate consumers. Absolutely, Austin. Thanks for bringing that up here in the closing. I completely agree. So lots to think about going into your Friday and the weekend here for sure. If you have any orders on these e-commerce platforms, you might want to go back and take a look at that. But Cori, thank you again for everything you're doing in this space. This has been an amazing conversation. And everybody, please join us back here next Friday for the next Food Safety Chat at 8 a.m. Mountain Time, 10 a.m. Eastern, or wherever you're at in the world. Join us and bring your drink with you, and we'll talk more food safety, and we'll together as a community improve food safety for everybody. So thank you, Cori, for everything you're doing. This has been an amazing talk. I think this has been the longest one, so I think you have the record on that. Right? So thanks, everybody. Have a great Friday, and we will see you back here next Friday. Thank you very much for taking the time. Talk to you soon.